100 years ago, in a wealthy family, a wedding was held for their eldest son. However, the servants and gossiping neighbors gathered around, whispering about the bride being sacrificed to the spirit guarding the house. The groom assured his wife that it was just a rumor, but suddenly, he fainted. The bride was chased into the forest by something, and only screams were heard as she fell into a ravine. Fast forward to modern times, we meet Du Rim, a woman who loves scuba diving. One day, she witnesses a woman attempting suicide and rescues her. The woman, heartbroken after a breakup, throws a tantrum at Du Rim, making her question her act of kindness. The woman gives Du Rim a bracelet before leaving. Later, Du Rim's grandmother calls her back home, where they run a seafood restaurant. Du Rim goes out to deliver an order to a construction site, where she saves Yi Hyan, the son of a wealthy family, from a falling brick. Yi Hyan's company is facing a strike because of delayed salaries. We are then introduced to Yi Kyung, Yi Hyan's younger sister, who is forced into an engagement with Kang Ju, a recently returned overseas student. Kang Ju presents her with a necklace as an engagement gift. The two go out for a meal, and Kang Ju emphasizes the political motivations behind the marriage, leaving Yi Kyung feeling like a pawn. A Japanese businesswoman arrives as a new business partner for Kang Ju. He has a plan in place when gifting the necklace to Yi Kyung, as it was crafted by the businesswoman's late husband. The necklace holds sentimental value, earning Kang Ju favor with the businesswoman. Yi Kyung feels like a commodity in Kang Ju's eyes, and he confirms this, stating that their engagement is purely political, and she shouldn't dream of romantic love like ordinary people. Back at the company, Kang Ju immediately makes changes, canceling a contract with a famous music group and firing a receptionist who has worked for 3 years for the reason of using cheap perfume. Yi Kyung goes home and gets scolded by her mother for bringing shame upon the family. Her mother urges her to endure the situation, as the family is on the verge of bankruptcy and desperately needs Kang Ju's financial support. Later that night, Yi Hyan asks about his sister's engagement, but she hides her true feelings, claiming everything is fine. The next morning, Du Rim tricks her friends into going to her restaurant by showing them photos of the famous music group and lying about them visiting. Her friends, being huge fans, ask for the same dishes, which Du Rim cleverly uses to her advantage, ordering expensive items. Meanwhile, Yi Kyung's mother, still concerned about her daughter's dislike for Kang Ju, seeks out a fortune teller who claims to have a spirit helping him with his readings. She goes to him for insight into her daughter's future marriage. That evening, Du Rim opens a street stall selling coffee and snacks for extra income. She bumps into her 2 fanatical friends, who mention Kang Ju since he is the brother of a member of the music group. They notice Du Rim's resemblance to Kang Ju's fiancée, Yi Kyung. Soon after, 3 men order drinks but refuse to pay, becoming rude and disrespectful. Du Rim, unable to tolerate their behavior, teaches them a lesson. The evening proves to be quite profitable for her. Du Rim's aunt is ill, but she is afraid to burden her niece with her medical expenses and refuses treatment. Du Rim urges her to get help, reminding her they only have each other. The next morning, tragedy strikes when Du Rim discovers her business partner has embezzled all the money. She rushes home, only to find her grandmother collapsed on the floor. She rushes her to the hospital, where the doctor informs them that surgery is necessary. Her grandmother, upon hearing the news, can't bring herself to forgive the employee, but Du Rim urges her to stay calm and avoid further stress on her heart. That night, Yi Kyung is mocked by her friends for being a gold digger, clinging to Kang Ju's fame. She realizes that one of them, Min Ho, is envious because she has been close to Kang Ju since childhood and feels like he has been taken away from her. During the party, Yi Hyan receives a letter from a young boy, handed to him by Yi Kyung. She returns the necklace and leaves. They searched the house but couldn't find her. Kang Ju's mother contacted Yi Kyung's mother, urging her to find her daughter. The media had already captured photos of Yi Kyung leaving the party, fueling rumors of a breakup and damaging their reputations. With the 2 families scheduled to have dinner together soon and Yi Kyung still missing, Yi Hyan felt the pressure to find her. Du Rim was struggling financially and desperately needed a loan, but no one was willing to help. Unexpectedly, Yi Hyan appeared at her doorstep. Du Rim, feeling desperate, decided to gamble on a lottery ticket, hoping for a miracle. She noticed the bracelet again and put it on, determined to take a final shot. She spotted Yi Hyan's business cards and thought of calling him to demand compensation for saving him earlier, but felt it would be unethical. However, with nothing left to lose, she decided to call him. Yi Hyan was at her doorstep just as she called. He wanted to talk with her for a while. She confessed she was feeling overwhelmed, but Yi Hyan asked her to let him see her hair. To his astonishment, he realized she bore a striking resemblance to Yi Kyung. He pleaded with her to help him and become Kang Ju's fiancée. She was taken to Yi Hyan's house and given temporary accommodation. Yi Hyan tried to verify her identity and found no connection to his family, but the coincidence was too unbelievable. While preparing herself, she secretly snuck into Yi Kyung's room to playfully rummage around, only to be caught by Yi Hyan. The next morning, he took her to a makeup artist. She lost her bracelet and frantically searched for it. Luckily, she found it without encountering Kang Ju, who had just arrived. Yi Hyan, concerned about being discovered, took her back and started teaching her the rules of high society, preparing her for the evening's events and introducing her to the people she would meet. They practiced together for a while before heading to the dinner. That evening, while in the restroom, Du Rim came face to face with the employee who stole the money from her business. She immediately chased after her, while Yi Hyan was meeting with Kang Ju's family. Du Rim caught up with the woman and demanded her money back, but upon seeing Kang Ju, she quickly hid, sending the woman away. She then prepared herself to greet Kang Ju, trying to act normal despite her nervousness. Her awkward demeanor was apparent, but Kang Ju seemed oblivious and led her inside. On the way, he gave her time to reconsider and allowed her to back out. Her annoyance grew as she heard his arrogant and dismissive tone, and she decided to play along. Suddenly, she tripped, causing both of them to accidentally kiss. They argued for a moment, but ultimately decided to act like nothing happened and entered the house. During dinner, Du Rim managed to make a good impression by being a fan of Kang Ju's brother and not being a fussy eater. However, Yi Hyan's mother subtly reminded her that Yi Kyung disliked sushi. The dinner was a success, and Kang Ju's parents wanted to quickly arrange the wedding. After everyone left, allowing the young couple some privacy, Kang Ju left, still upset about the morning's events. Du Rim unexpectedly ran into the Japanese businesswoman. She couldn't understand what the businesswoman was saying, but luckily, Yi Hyan returned to help her. Du Rim expressed her disappointment with Kang Ju, and also understood why his sister had left. That night, back in her room, Du Rim lay in bed, unable to forget the accidental kiss with Kang Ju. The next morning, Du Rim personally cooked for Yi Hyan and his mother because the housekeeper had quit. She was a good cook, so they entrusted her with the meals. Yi Hyan continued to teach her about his sister's habits and acquaintances. Later, Kang Ju's mother called Du Rim and forced her to learn all about Kang Ju's preferences and habits, as well as the family traditions. She insisted that Du Rim must be knowledgeable in order to properly support Kang Ju. Du Rim went to Kang Ju's room to explore and playfully messed around with things. She fell asleep and was caught by Kang Ju. While changing clothes, he tried to flirt with her, but she used her martial arts skills to subdue him. Remembering she needed to be patient, she retreated. Kang Ju's family was hosting a memorial for his grandfather, the company founder. Yi Hyan wanted Du Rim to attend, but she argued that their initial agreement did not include such involvement. Yi Hyan promised to help her open a proper restaurant, and she agreed to go. At the memorial, one of Kang Ju's aunts was annoyed because she lost her phone while greeting people and assumed Du Rim wasn't Kang Ju's fiancé. She created a scene, forcing Du Rim to flee. Later, she ran into Yi Kyung's friend, Rumai. Not knowing what to say, she remained silent. She then crossed paths with Kang Ju, who made a sarcastic remark, leading to a heated exchange. She helped the kitchen staff with preparing fish and other tasks, earning their respect. Kang Ju's mother warned her not to get too close to the staff, fearing she wouldn't be able to give orders later. She was then introduced to her aunt and managed to win her over by doing as she was told. Later, she put the aunt to bed and stayed overnight herself. It was almost time for the ceremony when Kang Ju came to wake her up. After the ceremony, Du Rim stayed to clean up the candles. Suddenly, the lights flickered and Kang Ju appeared. Du Rim, startled, fell onto him. Rumai walked in, witnessing the scene, and became jealous, leaving the room. Kang Ju, still harboring feelings for Rumai, chased after her. Although they had feelings for each other, Kang Ju couldn't defy his family's wishes, as Du Rim was their chosen one. Du Rim accidentally discovered their relationship and quickly ran away. She found a hidden room in the house and discovered a girl dressed in white hiding there. Kang Ju found her, and she was holding a kitten. The kitten's mother had died, and she wanted to bury her. Kang Ju was too weak to dig a hole, so she did it herself and then took the kitten home. She treated Kang Ju like an ordinary person, not with any kind of respect, which slightly annoyed him. When they returned home, Yi Hyan reprimanded her for not remembering that Yi Kyung didn't like cats or dogs because she was allergic. While Du Rim didn't mind, she wondered what she would do if Yi Kyung came back. She begged to keep the kitten, promising to take it away if Yi Kyung returned. The next morning, she went to Kang Ju's company for an interview. The receptionist who had been fired by Kang Ju showed up to throw tomatoes at him. Du Rim stepped in to protect him, getting covered in tomato juice. He didn't thank her but instead blamed her for being nosy and attracting attention. She was then taken inside to change clothes and accidentally ran into a friend from her past, Jin Ju. Jin Ju recognized her, but Du Rim denied it. During the interview, Kang Ju lied about how he proposed to her. After the interview, the program director, noticing her musical talent, asked her to play an instrument. Du Rim was nervous and asked for a glass of water to calm her nerves. Jin Ju, recognizing her friend, volunteered to get it. She accidentally dropped something and helped Du Rim escape the situation. Later, they met in a storage room, where Du Rim confided in Jin Ju about her current situation. As she left, Du Rim encountered the fired receptionist, who was trying to defend herself and get justice. Du Rim understood her situation and gave her some money. She later tried to tell Kang Ju, but he said he wasn't a charity and needed to look after himself. Du Rim, furious, lashed out, calling him a heartless person who never understood the struggles of others because he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. That night, Du Rim noticed that Yi Hyan was distressed and hoped he would soon find his sister. The next morning, she saw a cake-eating contest and decided to participate. While eating, she noticed Kang Ju's mother watching and made sure to get cake all over her face so she wouldn't be recognized. Kang Ju showed up, leading his mother away, but he knew exactly what she was doing. He told her to stop acting foolishly, but she said she was stressed and needed to release it. Kang Ju questioned Ru Mai about it, finding it strange because Yi Kyung had always hated sweets and animals due to her allergies. He then asked Jin Ju for confirmation. Meanwhile, Yi Hyan's mother rushed home and berated Du Rim for her cake-eating escapade, which had gone viral online. She also forbade her from keeping the cat and demanded a change in her clothing style. Du Rim reluctantly gave the cat to Jin Ju to foster. She also learned from Jin Ju about some of the good things Kang Ju had accomplished on his own, which led her to accompany Yi Hyan to apologize for causing him trouble. She and Kang Ju then attended a music performance by Kang Ju's younger brother. After the performance, the younger brother introduced Du Rim and Kang Ju to everyone. He and the others wanted them to kiss, so they went through the motions for appearance's sake. They later met the younger brother and his girlfriend in the lobby. Kang Ju urged his brother to call home more often to reassure his parents. On their way out, Kang Ju threatened Du Rim about the cake-eating incident, demanding she clean up the mess. When they got home, Yi Hyan's mother apologized for overreacting, but Du Rim felt she was the one at fault. The next morning, a basket of flowers arrived at the house. Du Rim saw that they were for Yi Hyan's birthday. Later, she went to Kang Ju's house, and his mother seemed to be still upset about the cake incident, but Kang Ju had pleaded with her to forgive Du Rim, so she didn't hold a grudge. While Kang Ju's mother was still wary, his father was more relaxed, as long as his daughter-in-law was a good eater. Du Rim noticed that Kang Ju's father played a game she had played before, so they played together. Even though they got ink all over their faces as a penalty, they still had fun and took a picture together. Later, the housemaid told Du Rim that when Kang Ju was 8 years old, he was kidnapped by his tutor. He managed to escape the next day, but no one wanted to talk about what happened, keeping it a secret and continuing with their lives as usual. The maid hoped Du Rim wouldn't dwell on it. That day, Kang Ju's younger brother gave Ru Mai a gift, but she refused it. A few steps later, she suddenly fainted, and he took her to rest. Du Rim was out buying a tie for Yi Hyan when Kang Ju saw her, but she was getting it for Yi Hyan, not him. She planned to throw Yi Hyun a birthday party, but he refused, claiming he had plans. She didn't expect him to accept anyway, so she didn't mind. His younger brother came to tell them the news, so Kang-ju went to check on Ru-mai. Do-rim was just tired from staying up late. Kang-ju gave Ru-mai a few days off to avoid accusations of mistreating her friend. Meanwhile, we learned that Yi Hyun's mother discovered a curse on Kang-ju's family after her fortune-telling session. The first daughter-in-law would be sacrificed. That night, Do-rim and Yi Hyun went out for drinks, and Yi Hyun shared how he had made his mother miserable when he was younger, demanding she buy him birthday candles, only to pass out on the way home. While taking him home because he was drunk, she ran into Kang-ju, who helped her get Yi Hyun home safely. The next morning, Yi Hyun realized the flowers had been sent by his sister, Yi Kyung. He and his mother were secretly communicating, and she had orchestrated this to sacrifice Do-rim to the curse on Kang-ju's family. That day at the company, Yi Hyun found a pile of receipts from his mother's desk and discreetly took some. Do-rim had a date with Yi Kyung's friends and tried to act normal. They went out for dinner and invited Kang-ju, who claimed to be busy, but then suddenly showed up. During the meal, Ru-mai kept complaining about her boyfriend being stolen from her. Do-rim dropped her phone and bent down to pick it up. She noticed Ru-mai touching Kang-ju's legs, so she took his shoes and took him away. She later told Kang-ju's mother about Ru-mai's behavior. His mother was concerned, fearing that if Ru-mai won over Kang-ju, she would lose the money she needed to maintain the company. That night, Do-rim and Yi Hyun went out to buy some things. A woman selling bao buns ran to them, claiming Do-rim had forgotten something. She hadn't forgotten anything, but they both realized that the woman was referring to Yi Kyung and ran to find her. They split up, and while chasing after Yi Kyung, Do-rim almost got into an accident. Yi Kyung's mother, hearing this, told her daughter to be careful and stay home. The next morning, Do-rim learned that Kang-ju and Ru-mai had a date at a villa and followed them secretly. She arrived at a house where Kang-ju was sitting alone, enjoying the warmth of the fireplace. She waited the whole day, but Ru-mai never came, making her realize she must have been found out. It was true. He took her inside to rest. She wanted to know about his relationship with Ru-mai, but he told her to forget about it, claiming it was the same as telling the world he had a mistress. He wasn't interested in answering her questions, so she left, but for some reason, she turned back around. She was a little hungry, so she decided to cook and force Kang-ju to help. "No work, no food," she said. Later, she went to the bathroom to wash up and tripped, hitting her head on the bathtub. Kang-ju called for an ambulance and took her to the hospital. They spent the night at the hospital and were discharged the next morning. He took her back home. She told Yi Hyun what happened and began to fantasize about Kang-ju. That night, Kang-ju's father wondered why Do-rim hadn't come to visit him. He was bored without anyone to play games with. He was about to mention the curse, but then changed his mind. That night, he had a nightmare about his first love, his wife, and how she had suffered under the family curse. 30 years had passed, and he still couldn't forget her. The next morning, Do-rim was able to remove her neck brace. Her friend, Jin-ju, invited her out for drinks, encouraging her to dress more seductively to win over Kang-ju. While trying on some clothes, two men approached Jin-ju, demanding money and pushing Do-rim over. She angrily grabbed a frying pan and swung it at their heads. Ru-mai, wearing a wig, arrived and didn't recognize Do-rim, so she was able to leave. When she got home, she ran into Kang-ju, but he didn't recognize her either. He was standing guard outside the door, blocking her entry, so she called Yi Hyun for help. Kang-ju waited a while before realizing he had bumped into Do-rim earlier and chased after her. He saw her climbing into the house and then tripped while trying to catch her. He was injured. Kang-ju asked why she was dressed so strangely and had that ridiculous hairstyle. She explained that she wanted to look more alluring because Kang-ju had said she looked like a student. He was there to apologize, so he bought her a cake and they ate it together in the snow. To thank him for getting hurt while helping her, she shared some sweet potatoes with him. He noticed that she had gotten some cake on her lips and took advantage of the situation to kiss her. Yi Hyun witnessed this, but pretended not to notice. Do-rim was surprised by his actions, but he said that he didn't need her permission. Since she was the one who had nothing, she should obey those with power, like him. Seeing that she was cold, he gave her his jacket and left. She didn't know if he was on medication, or if he had gone crazy. When she got home, she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. She almost confessed her feelings for Kang-ju, but she quickly regained her composure. Kang-ju went home and asked the maid to bring him some sweet potatoes. He went upstairs and invited his father to join him. The next morning at work, Do-rim brought a dozen food boxes and treated everyone in the company. When she ran into Ru-mai, she blamed Do-rim for spreading rumors about her relationship with Kang-ju's brother. Do-rim maintained that she was not that kind of person and wouldn't resort to such low tactics. Ru-mai's behavior was motivated by the video she had taken of Do-rim eating cake and posted online. Suddenly, a crisis erupted. The custom-made ring for the Japanese businesswoman disappeared. Kang-ju believed that his secretary, Kim, was the thief because he had been the one to deliver the ring to Kang-ju's office, and he had previously been denied a loan. He wanted to report Kim to the police, but Do-rim stopped him. She didn't have the authority to overrule Kang-ju, so she was powerless. Do-rim followed him to the police station and asked Kim if he suspected anyone. He remembered helping Jin-ju when he received the ring from the delivery service, and that was the only time he took his hands off the box. Do-rim then went to find Jin-ju, but she was being confronted by the two men who had been demanding money from her. It turned out she had stolen the ring. The two men recognized Do-rim and backed off, leaving. Jin-ju confessed that she had been harassed by the two men daily and had stolen the ring out of desperation. She intended to take responsibility and confess to Kang-ju, but she knew she would be fired if she did. Do-rim devised a plan to secretly return the ring to the box without anyone knowing. However, a hidden camera captured the entire event. That night, everything went according to Do-rim's plan. But Ru-mai, in a fit of rage, showed the video to Kang-ju. He rushed to Do-rim's house and demanded an explanation. He knew she didn't need to steal the ring, and he felt their marriage was a mistake because he had to constantly solve her problems. Yi-hyun arrived and assured him that there must be a misunderstanding. When they returned, Kang-ju's mother insisted that the person Do-rim had protected come forward and take responsibility. But Do-rim and Yi-hyun knew that Ru-mai was behind the whole ordeal. The next day, Do-rim's story spread throughout the company. Kang-ju was disheartened and went out for drinks. His mother also heard about the ring, but Yi-hyun's mother knew that she would never cancel the engagement because Do-rim would ultimately be the sacrifice for her. Jin-ju, tormented by guilt, went to the police station to apologize to Kim. But he didn't blame her because he had considered stealing the ring himself as soon as he saw it. The next morning, Jin-ju went to Kang-ju to clear Do-rim's name. The two families met, and Kang-ju's mother wanted to quickly organize the wedding to avoid gossip. But Yi-hyun's mother knew about her true intentions and wouldn't allow it to happen so easily. She and her daughter had devised a plan to take over Kang-ju's company. Ru-mai was summoned by Kang-ju's mother. She told her to stay by Kang-ju's side and help him. She would get what she wanted eventually. The next day, Yi-hyun and Do-rim hadn't seen Kang-ju yet. They decided to buy some things and go to the movies. But Kang-ju called and asked for a ticket to the same movie as Do-rim. He gave up his seat, and throughout the entire film, Do-rim didn't realize the person sitting next to her wasn't Yi-hyun. She was startled when the movie ended and Kang-ju wanted to talk. He apologized for accusing her without hearing her side of the story. She asked him about Jin-ju, but he didn't say anything. This was the first time he had ever apologized to anyone. When they got home, she saw that Kang-ju's mother seemed sad, so she said she would do her best to help in any way she could. A sinister smile spread across her face. The next day, Ru-mai began investigating Do-rim. She found a video of Do-rim hitting some men who refused to pay for their drinks. She went to Jin-ju to ask about Do-rim, but she refused to answer and then quit her job. However, she couldn't say goodbye to Do-rim because she was at an orphanage with Yi-hyun's mother, performing for the children. The Yi-hyun household was in chaos because Ru-mai had organized a performance, forcing Do-rim to play the piano. Yi-hyun arrived, but the performance was about to start. She was called to the stage while Yi-hyun tried to activate the fire alarm system. He hammered on it, but couldn't get it to work. Do-rim, under pressure from everyone, started playing the first note. She put her fingers on the keys, and to everyone's astonishment, she began to play beautifully. Yi-hyun heard the music and stopped what he was doing to watch. Ru-mai was furious that her plan had failed. It turned out that when Yi Hyun heard Du Rim calling for help from the car, Yi Kyung was called down by her mother to handle the situation. The two girls, who looked identical, met and switched places. That evening, after everyone had gone home, Kang Ju's mother still pretended that she hadn't seen Yi Kyung in a while. The two of them went upstairs, while Du Rim was relieved that she didn't have to act anymore and that Yi Hyun could sleep peacefully without worrying. But the two of them upstairs were anxious, fearing that Du Rim would leave and Yi Kyung would have to face the curse. Meanwhile, Kang Ju's family was very fond of Du Rim and wanted her to be their daughter-in-law. They urged Kang Ju to invite her for dinner the next day. That night, Du Rim wrote down everything Yi Kyung needed to remember. Kang Ju's mother gave her some money as a thank you and suggested she stay in the city and open a restaurant, offering to help with the expenses. Du Rim wasn't sure yet and wanted to ask her grandmother first. The next morning, she packed her bags to go home. Yi Hyun saw her off, but he realized he had fallen for her. He had pretended to have a brotherly relationship with her before, but now he wanted more. He turned around to find her, but she had already gotten into the car. She went to Jin Ju's house to get the cat and gave her some money to pay off her debts. She then went to the company to ask the receptionist to give Kang Ju his jacket, but he appeared, causing her to run away in panic. The cat fell out of her bag and Kang Ju saw it. He noticed her slowly dragging her bag and chased after her. She was caught, but she lied and said she hadn't done her makeup yet. She returned the jacket, and Kang Ju told her not to be late for dinner. Kang Ju returned to his office and ate some of the sweet potatoes Du Rim had left behind. When Kim, the secretary, came in with some paperwork, he gave him 2 sweet potatoes. Meanwhile, Yi Kyung arrived at Kang Ju's house and was asked by the maid to fillet a fish. But she had never cooked before. She claimed she was too tired from the concert to do it. She was also very picky at dinner, and her mother-in-law found an excuse for her, saying she was nervous about the wedding. When she played chess with her father-in-law, she didn't know how to play. Her sudden changes had made everyone in the family suspicious. When Yi Kyung got home, she told her mother what Du Rim had done and how it had made things more difficult for her. But strangely, Kang Ju was different now, less annoying. Du Rim had returned home and reunited with her grandmother. She planned to stay there and not go back to the city. Her grandmother wanted her to get married and asked her if she had met anyone nice in the city. Du Rim mentioned Kang Ju, but only talked about his annoying qualities. That night, the maid was changing the water in the ancestral shrine when Kang Ju scared her. She couldn't understand how he could be there peacefully without anything bad happening to him. Everyone found the place terrifying. Kang Ju's mother arrived and told the maid to never mention these kinds of things to Kang Ju again. The next morning, Du Rim noticed that the bracelet was no longer working for her. She didn't feel any luck. She threw it away, but the mysterious woman appeared and warned her that she would have bad luck if she threw it away. But if she wore it again, she would have good fortune and get everything she wanted. Du Rim decided to trust her and put it back on. Yi Hyun arrived and was invited by Du Rim and her grandmother for a delicious meal. He brought a gift for Du Rim's grandmother. Meanwhile, Ru Mai arrived and gave the maid some expensive gifts to persuade her to reveal some secrets about the house. That night, when Yi Hyun returned home, his mother urged him to try to persuade Du Rim and her grandmother to move in with them. Du Rim's grandmother liked Yi Hyun and wished Du Rim could date him. Du Rim told her grandmother about moving to the city, but she said she would only go if her grandmother went with her. The next morning, Yi Kyung realized her brother had fallen for someone and was acting different. She then went to try on wedding rings with her mother-in-law and ran into Ru Mai. Ru Mai announced that she had given up and gave Yi Kyung a gift, but it was something embarrassing. She met Kang Ju and left. When she was leaving, she asked Kang Ju if he was going to try on wedding suits the next day, and then she suddenly screamed. Kang Ju was worried and ran downstairs, but she was fine. A car had suddenly appeared, making her jump. Seeing that she was okay, he left. She realized that he must have fallen for Du Rim. Meanwhile, Du Rim's grandmother thought her granddaughter also liked Yi Hyun, and if she stayed there, it would keep them apart. She decided to move to the city with Du Rim. Back at Kang Ju's house, his father began to investigate his first wife's death and discovered a truth his wife had concealed from him. He confronted his wife, accusing her of having a plan for their future daughter-in-law and forbidding her to harm Du Rim. I will refer to the person who is the subject of the family's curse as the victim to avoid confusion. Kang Ju overheard their conversation and understood why his mother had chosen Yi Kyung over Ru Mai. He went to the ancestral shrine and confessed that he had given his heart to someone. Suddenly, the spirit that guarded the family appeared. She had protected and cared for Kang Ju since he was a child. He didn't want to believe the rumors, as he didn't want the woman he loved to die. But she explained that a sacrifice was necessary for him to become the master of the house. His choice, however, would ultimately determine the outcome. Du Rim told Yi Hyun about her plans to move to the city. He said he would pick her and her grandmother up at the bus station the next day. The next morning, when Yi Kyung's mother heard that Du Rim was coming, she wanted her to pick out a beautiful wedding dress because Du Rim would be the one to wear it and be sacrificed. Meanwhile, Yi Hyun took Du Rim to look at restaurants, unaware of his mother's plan for her. Yi Kyung was trying on dresses when Kang Ju suddenly arrived. He said he had decided to break up with her. He fought back tears as he spoke, making the breakup final. He told her that if she held any grudges, she could have them. He would take care of any financial damages or compensation. Yi Kyung went home and told her mother, who was shocked, but saw it as an opportunity and started making plans to bring Du Rim to the house. Yi Hyun had prepared a ring and planned to propose to Du Rim. Just as he was about to do so, his mother called and told him the wedding was cancelled, and she wanted Du Rim to come and confront Kang Ju. Yi Hyun thought that they were blaming Du Rim for cancelling the wedding and went to find his sister, telling her to deal with it herself. But there was nothing she could do. That night, Kang Ju told his parents about the broken engagement, but they objected, especially his mother. She told him that marriage wasn't a child's game, and he couldn't just decide whether or not he wanted to get married. She called his in-laws and declared that the wedding would go on as planned. The next morning, Du Rim went to the company to ask about the situation. Kang Ju tried to avoid her, but Ru Mai called him to a meeting. Du Rim waited, but he hadn't returned after a long time, so she asked Kim, who told her that the meeting had been extended. Du Rim decided to find him herself. Ru Mai was surprised by the sudden cancellation of the wedding. Kang Ju knew why Ru Mai had stopped fighting for him. She had learned about the curse and backed out. Kang Ju then went to find Du Rim and said that she always caused him trouble, and he had decided to end it because he didn't want to deal with any more problems. When Kang Ju returned home, his mother wanted him to reconsider. He thought about what would have happened if his mother had replaced Du Rim with Ru Mai. He couldn't imagine it. He just wanted her to leave Du Rim alone, as it was wrong to drag an innocent person into her selfish ambition. Du Rim went out drinking because she had developed feelings for Kang Ju. Yi Hyun was forced to take her home. He noticed that she seemed to like Kang Ju more than him. He left Du Rim at Jin Ju's place and went home, where his mother blamed everything on Du Rim. He wanted Yi Kyung to continue playing her role, but she was tired of it and gave up, agreeing to cancel the engagement. Kang Ju's father tried to comfort his son. He knew that Kang Ju had broken up with Du Rim because he was afraid the curse would take her from him. But Kang Ju tried to hide his feelings and went inside. His father then asked the housekeeper to find someone. The next morning, while having breakfast with Jin Ju, Kang Ju's father called and asked to meet her. He told her about his first wife, who he loved very much, but who died on their honeymoon. He then told her the rumors about the curse in the family, explaining why Kang Ju had broken up with her. Kang Ju was a lonely, solitary person until he met Du Rim. He didn't want to force her, so he decided to respect her decision and hoped that she would remember what he had told her that day. Du Rim returned home and was asked by Kang Ju's mother to help persuade him to change his mind. She agreed to help because of the restaurant, but she told herself it was only because of the restaurant and nothing else. Meanwhile, Kang Ju's father found someone who used to work for his mother-in-law and learned the truth about his wife's accident decades ago. The next morning, he went to see his mother-in-law with his wife and son. But to their surprise, Du Rim was also there. Kang Ju seemed annoyed but accepted the situation. As soon as they entered the house, Du Rim started making noodles for Kang Ju's grandmother. Kang Ju's mother offered to help, but Du Rim suggested she push Kang Ju in instead. He kneaded the dough without any strength, which led to an argument in the kitchen. Du Rim quickly won over his grandmother with her cooking skills. Meanwhile, Ru Mai went to Yi Kyung's house. She told her about the rumors of the curse and how Kang-ju knew about it and had broken off the engagement to protect her. Yi-hyan accidentally overheard their conversation. On the way back, Kang-ju dropped Do-rim off on the side of the road and left. She told him that she knew the reason and was not afraid, but he ignored her and drove away. Yi-kang went to find her brother, but Yi-hyan ignored her and turned away. That night, Kang-ju's father sat and pondered the truth he had learned from his mother-in-law's driver, who said that his first wife's death was not an accident and his mother-in-law was involved. Kang-ju met with his mother and told her he wouldn't live the way she wanted and end up as distant as his parents. Meanwhile, Yi-kang found her brother's tie and her mother told her it was a gift from Do-rim. Yi-hyan went to see Do-rim to confess his feelings and propose, but she had always seen him as a brother and didn't know how to directly reject him, so she turned away. Yi-hyan went home heartbroken and disappointed. Yi-kang tried to ask him about the situation, as she knew the truth, but he ignored her because she had been rejected. But his mother and sister saw this as an opportunity to use Do-rim's feelings and let her make the decision without their involvement. The next morning, Kang-ju's mother announced that she would cancel the engagement because she didn't want to risk her daughter's life to the curse. She forbade Yi-kang to see Kang-ju again. Yi-hyan knew about the curse but didn't believe it. He didn't care if the wedding was cancelled. He didn't want to see her and Kang-ju together again. Kang-ju's mother then went to the company to break off the engagement with Kang-ju and his mother. She asked him why he had broken up with Yi-kang, and it was exactly as she thought. He was trying to protect Do-rim. She asked him to never see her daughter again. That night, Do-rim asked Jin-ju if she had a new job. If not, she could work at her restaurant and she promised to pay her a good salary. A few days later, the two girls officially opened the restaurant. The fortune teller whom Yi-kyung's mother had visited saw the flyer and decided to try the food. Yi-hyan also went to the restaurant, which was packed. Instead of being a customer, he decided to help out. At the end of the day, the four of them sat down to celebrate, and Do-rim's grandmother still didn't know they had broken up. She and Jin-ju tried to match them up. When Yi-hyan left, he told Do-rim that he would wait until she agreed and wished her good luck. While counting money and taking inventory, Do-rim was suddenly visited by Secretary Kim for a meal. She had to hide her face to avoid being recognized and causing more trouble. She was also heartbroken to hear Kim talk about Kang-ju being depressed lately because of the breakup. Jin-ju gave Do-rim's food to Kim and asked him to give it to Kang-ju. The next morning, Kang-ju received the food but hadn't touched it when he left for work. His younger brother came to visit and advised him not to think of love as something to let go of, but rather as something to hold on to. He also opened the food and ate it, and inside was a sweet potato, which surprised Kang-ju. Meanwhile, the landlady discovered that Do-rim had a fever, but Do-rim thought she would be fine with medicine. The landlady's mother came to check on Do-rim and wanted to know why she rejected Yi-hyan. She had a hunch it was because of Kang-ju and admitted that she was heartbroken to see the two young people separated. Do-rim then made some food for her, but she fainted and was taken to the hospital. The landlady took the opportunity to call Kang-ju. Later, she and Jin-ju returned from the market, but Do-rim was gone. The only person there was the fortune teller. He said there was a strange energy in the house that could harm the landlord. But the landlady didn't believe him and chased him away. However, what he said wasn't a lie. Do-rim woke up and found Kang-ju there. He saw that she was okay and left. She sat up and told him how much she missed him. No matter what she did, she couldn't forget him. He admitted that he loved her too, but he couldn't go any further because the curse wasn't just a rumor, and he was afraid that if something happened to her, he would regret it. They were both heartbroken, but Kang-ju couldn't be weak and selfish, so he left. Do-rim chased after him, and Kang-ju ran into Yi-hyan. He hoped that they wouldn't meet again. But Do-rim caught up and ran to hug Kang-ju. He wanted her to understand that he didn't want her to forget about herself because of him. At this point, Yi-hyan realized he had no chance. That night, Jin-ju advised Do-rim to give up, saying that Kang-ju had always seen her as Yi-kyung. If he found out the truth and abandoned her, what would she do? Kang-ju went home and ran to the shrine, smashing it. His parents ran to him, and his father slapped him. He said that if Kang-ju couldn't control his emotions, then he shouldn't even think about receiving love from anyone. If he felt like he couldn't overcome it, he should get rid of it. Meanwhile, Yi-hyan went home and blamed his mother for calling Kang-ju. She said she had done it so that Yi-hyan could see Do-rim's true feelings and give up. But he realized his mother had other motives beyond his well-being. He went to his room and called his subordinate, asking him to investigate something. The next morning, Do-rim went to the landlady and expressed her desire to become Kang-ju's bride. She accepted the risks and danger just to tell Kang-ju the truth, that she had always been Do-rim, not Yi-kyung. The landlady pretended to try and stop her, knowing full well that Do-rim wouldn't listen. She said she would help her because it was what she had wanted all along. As Kang-ju was about to drive home from work, he met Do-rim. She got into his car and said she would be his wife for a day, even if it meant her death. Kang-ju stopped the car and questioned her. She was willing to run into the road and get hit by a car. He pulled her in and wanted her to stop being reckless, but she called him a coward for not facing the curse that wasn't even confirmed to be real. That night, she went home and was visited by Yi-hyan. He advised her to learn how to let go, but for a stubborn person, it was no use. The next morning, Kang-ju's mother called her and hoped she would help Kang-ju change his mind. That night, Kang-ju went to the landlady's house to beg her to let him continue his relationship with Do-rim. She intentionally refused, forcing him to kneel and plead. She tried to appear normal, but then secretly called Do-rim to tell her that they could continue. The next morning, they met at the company, embraced, and then left. When Do-rim was going home, she encountered the woman who had stolen money from her before. She chased after her, but Ru-mai hid the woman, forcing Do-rim to go home. Do-rim wanted to ask the woman a few questions, which anyone could guess. Meanwhile, Yi-hyan continued to search for information about his mother's schemes. He sent his subordinate to investigate, but he wasn't trustworthy because he had been bribed by Yi-hyan's mother. Yi-hyan went to Yi-kyung's room and found some suspicious items that were connected to the things he had experienced, his mother renting a house near the place he had met her, claiming it was to visit a friend, and Yi-kyung refusing to reveal her whereabouts. He went to Do-rim's restaurant. She tricked him into believing she was making food for Yi-hyan, which made the landlady happy. The fortune teller came again, and the landlady welcomed him this time because he wasn't a fake. He sensed a dark energy in the restaurant. Suddenly, Do-rim walked out, and he was shocked to see that her bracelet was very similar to the one worn by the spirit that he had encountered and protected in Kang-ju's house. He realized that the bracelet didn't bring good luck, but only misfortune. At the same time, Kang-ju went before the shrine and declared that he would face everything to protect the woman he loved, even if it meant the spirit guarding the house. He later met Do-rim at the company. She waited for him, but the lights suddenly went out because all the employees had left. 3 moonlit bulbs shone down, and Kang-ju appeared, throwing a roll of red thread towards her, symbolizing the red string of fate. He kissed her, and then took her home. As he was leaving, Yi-kyung appeared and wanted to know if Do-rim was ready to accept the risk. She believed that because they looked alike, one of them would have to die because of the curse, while the other would take her place and live with Kang-ju forever. Their conversation was witnessed by Ru-mai, who then followed Do-rim and went to the restaurant. Suddenly, the girl who owned the bracelet came to Do-rim. She said that Do-rim would have to use her life to exchange for love. She appeared as a female ghost in front of her, but only threatened her for a moment before disappearing. When Do-rim went back to the restaurant, she found Yi-hyan there. Jinju wondered why Yi-hyan was there, considering Do-rim had said she was delivering food to him. They went outside to talk, and Yi-hyan revealed that everything that had happened to her was orchestrated by his mother. If she continued down this path, she would be eliminated so that Yi-kyung could take her place in Kang-ju's life. If the curse was real, she would be the sacrifice. Do-rim couldn't believe it and didn't know what to do. Kang-ju's father was happy to see that his son had made a decision about his life. Do-rim couldn't sleep that night because of the ghost's warning. The next morning, Do-rim took the landlady shopping and out for a meal at a restaurant, trying to show her as much gratitude as possible. The landlady said that now all she needed was for Do-rim to find a husband, and she would be satisfied. Ru-mai went to find Kang-ju, decided to give up, and said that he would face many heartbreaking things in the future for trusting the people he loved. It would be best not to trust anyone too much, lest he be disappointed. The next day, both families decided to hold a wedding for Kang-ju. But the ceremony was on a small scale, so very few people knew about it. Kang Ju went to call his father to go with him. His mother also felt that after today, everything would be over and things would return to their rightful place. Du Rim's grandmother decided to go back to her hometown for a while, so she gave her instructions on everything. But just as she was leaving, the fortune teller arrived, and the grandmother wanted to hear the rest of his prophecy. However, he didn't want to say anything, but she pressured him, so he had to say bluntly that Du Rim was about to die. The grandmother was furious and chased him away. Du Rim went to deliver food to Yi Hyan and thank him before going to the church. Kang Ju and Du Rim had organized their own wedding ceremony, but Du Rim still couldn't bring herself to reveal her real name and continued to use Yi Kyung's identity. After the ceremony, they decided to go on a trip as planned. According to their itinerary, they went out to eat, and then cooked and ate together in the afternoon. During the meal, Du Rim asked Kang Ju what he thought if someone lied to him. He said that betrayal and deceit were two things he hated most. In the evening, they shared stories about when they first fell for each other. Du Rim said she had fallen for him when she fell in the bathroom and he took her to the hospital, but Kang Ju promised to tell her tomorrow. Jin Ju was anxious and couldn't sit still, so she decided to call Yi Hyan. He didn't know where Du Rim was, so he went to confront his sister. He had figured out their scheme but hadn't exposed them yet. He knew they had intended to eliminate Du Rim and must know where she was. Yi Kyung later called her mother, frantically asking her to eliminate Du Rim, fearing she would reveal their scheme to Kang Ju's family. But her mother remained calm because she knew everything would be over after tonight. That night, the ghost came to the newlywed couple's location. Images from 100 years ago appeared, and Du Rim's grandmother woke up from a dream. It turned out that 100 years ago, the bride who was chased by the ghost in the forest was Du Rim's grandmother. She had kept one of her wedding shoes, and Kang Ju's family kept the other. The next morning, Kang Ju dreamed about Du Rim committing suicide, and he woke up suddenly, finding only her bracelet left behind. She was standing at a cliff, remembering what the ghost had said. She had been tested by the ghost on the strength of her love for Kang Ju, and she had passed. But the people around her wouldn't let her off easily and would torment and tear her apart. Kang Ju might not accept her, but Du Rim was still willing to walk down this path. Now, every decision would directly affect her fate, and no one knew what she would get out of it. Kang Ju went to find her and found that she was safe. She had proven to Kang Ju that there was no curse or destiny. They could only create their own future. Yi Hyan went to the house, but found no one there. As he went outside to look for them, he found them both safe, but he was knocked unconscious by his mother's driver and taken away. Du Rim and Kang Ju had just returned home when they saw the landlady on the other side. They greeted her, and she wanted to take Du Rim home. They went inside to pack, and Du Rim was about to tell the truth, but she hesitated and missed the opportunity. Kang Ju received a call from his house, saying that his grandmother had a heart attack and was hospitalized. He asked if Du Rim could go with him, but the landlady insisted on taking her home to get ready first, so Kang Ju went alone. Yi Hyan woke up and tried to run to warn Du Rim, but he was too late. They were gone right in front of him. The landlady had left and taken Du Rim with two other men, beginning to replace Du Rim with Yi Kyung. But she didn't know that Yi Hyan had arrived in time and was secretly following them to rescue Du Rim. Yi Kyung went to the hospital and casually greeted her mother-in-law and brother-in-law. They then went together to see her grandmother. Kang Ju's brother called Ru Mai and told her that Yi Kyung was still there, so she asked for the address to find her. The grandmother asked to talk to Yi Kyung alone, so Kang Ju went outside. He begged his mother to accept reality and said he didn't blame her for what she had tried to do, because he understood she was trying to protect the family. After a while, Yi Kyung and her mother both returned. Kang Ju was later called by Secretary Kim, who asked about the situation. He thought Kim was following him, but Kim was only asking for Jin Ju. Kim asked what was going on, but Jin Ju didn't say anything. She was very worried because she couldn't get through to Yi Hyan either. Ru Mai arrived at the hospital and was about to tell Kang Ju's mother the truth. That night, Kang Ju went to the landlady's house to apologize for taking her daughter on such a risky adventure. Yi Kyung continued to act deep, and there was nothing that made Kang Ju suspicious. Yi Hyan found the place where Du Rim was being held captive and went to rescue her. He had injured his leg, so he had to help her walk. They were discovered on the way, and Yi Hyan used his body to shield Du Rim. His company's people arrived to stop them and took Yi Hyan to the hospital. The landlady blamed her men, but suddenly Kang Ju's mother arrived. She realized that the woman sitting there was Yi Kyung. She even called Kang Ju to hear Yi Kyung's voice on the other end, leaving the landlady with no room to deny it. The two women sat down to negotiate, and Kang Ju's mother gave the landlady a chance to withdraw and let her son be happy with Do Rim. But the landlady also had a secret with which to threaten Kang Ju's mother. She revealed a recording of Kang Ju's grandmother's conversation with Yi Kyung, admitting that she had killed Kang Ju's father's first wife to become Kang Ju's mother. The curse that people had been talking about wasn't real, and now she threatened to reveal the secret to the world, ruining Kang Ju's family's corporation. Both sides agreed to maintain the current situation and keep the secret hidden. Upon returning home, Kang Ju's mother was forced to keep the secret, especially from her husband, because she now realized she was the reason for his suffering and restlessness all these years. Kang Ju then went home and shared the good news with his father. Yi Kyung heard about her brother's injury and wanted to visit, but her mother stopped her, saying that if she went, she would run into Do Rim. The next morning, the two women met again. Kang Ju's mother wanted to wait until the grandmother woke up before officially announcing Yi Kyung as her daughter-in-law. But the landlady demanded that Kang Ju's mother give her a share of the company, transfer the ownership of one branch to Yi Kyung, and agree to withdraw her investment and company in exchange for her agreement. Another condition was that Do Rim couldn't be around Kang Ju ever again. Do Rim was still with Yi Hyan and hadn't eaten anything, worrying Jin Ju more than Yi Hyan. Suddenly, Yi Hyan had a seizure, forcing them to go outside to give the doctor space to work. Kang Ju's mother came to find her and apologized, but she asked her to stay away from Kang Ju because that would be best for him. Her presence and revealing the truth would only make him suffer. Yi Hyan recovered and his mother came to visit and see Do Rim. She wanted her to run away with Yi Hyan and live far away, but Do Rim felt sorry for her, seeing how she sacrificed her son for her ambition. She called her no different from a devil. She blamed herself because she used to have ambitions like her. Later, Do Rim went to look at Kang Ju one last time from a distance, took off her ring, and left. Ru Mai was waiting for this opportunity and took the ring to remind them that they hadn't been wearing their matching rings. Kang Ju asked about it, but she avoided the question. The fortune teller met the spirit again and blamed her for giving him wrong information, but she only said a few words before leaving. That night, Yi Kyung went to Kang Ju's house. They went up to his room for a while, and Kang Ju remembered how she had rummaged through his room and vandalized it. He tried to help her remember, but the butler called them down for dinner. But Yi Kyung's avoidance of him made Kang Ju start to notice something unusual. Things became even more suspicious when they went out to eat, and Yi Kyung couldn't eat many of the dishes Do Rim used to eat. They even went back to the place where Do Rim had let him try sweet potato for the first time. And back then she had been wearing a funny wig. But Yi Kyung didn't know anything, which made Kang Ju even more certain. He tried to bring up a fake detail, and Yi Kyung immediately went along with it, leaving him no room for doubt. He even tried to kiss her, but she dodged him. This made Kang Ju realize and question who she really was. He wanted to know who the person in front of him was because she was so different from the Yi Kyung he knew. But she said that it was Kang Ju who was different from the man he was before. He didn't want to prolong the conversation, so he left. That night, Ru Mai went to Do Rim's restaurant to see her. She wanted to know how Do Rim felt about being back in this life, and why she had given up, having already won Kang Ju over. But she didn't want to bring him too much happiness only to make him suffer later. She asked Ru Mai not to tell Kang Ju. She said that her suffering was the price of her greed, and she didn't want anyone else to suffer because of her. She left afterward, and Secretary Kim arrived at the restaurant. He saw Do Rim by chance. Jin Ju ran out and said that he was drunk and seeing things. The next morning, Kang Ju directly asked Ru Mai, because he knew she also knew what everyone was hiding from him. She only said that someone had replaced Yi Kyung but had now gone back to her previous life. Everyone around him knew except for him, and he had to understand that when he found out the truth, he would be the one who suffered the most. She only said this much, leaving the rest for him to figure out. At lunchtime, Kang Ju saw the food that Secretary Kim had brought, which was similar to the food Do Rim had cooked. He asked where it came from, and Kim said it was from Jin Ju's new workplace. He remembered that Du Rim had mentioned Jinju many times, so he asked Kim for the address. He went there and found Du Rim, but she pretended to be someone who was deceiving Kang Ju and had no feelings for him, that she was just trying to get the restaurant. He was helpless, calling her heartless and refusing to listen to her explanations. He left. The next day, he searched for information about Du Rim and went to see her again. He wanted to see if she was really just after money, so he threw a bunch of money at her and asked her to close the restaurant for a day. He then went home and started acting childish, saying he would marry Ru Mai if his mother wanted. But Ru Mai found that it wasn't a suitable place for her to stay, so she left. Kang Ju chased after her and asked if she still wanted to pursue him. But after witnessing what happened between Du Rim and Kang Ju, she realized that sometimes letting go was a way to love someone. She also realized that she had always been clinging to Kang Ju because of her obsession, not because she loved him. Kang Ju shared that he couldn't tell when Du Rim was expressing her true feelings and when she was lying. He couldn't distinguish. But whenever he intentionally insulted her, he felt pain too. With that worry, he got incredibly drunk that night and was taken back to his room by the butler and the maid. His younger brother wanted to talk to him, but he was already asleep and unconscious. The next morning, he went to see Yi Kyan. She made up a story about how she had initially hired Du Rim, but after a while, she started making demands and threatening to reveal secrets to Kang Ju if her demands weren't met. Yi Hyan tried to stop her and got seriously injured. She told Kang Ju to forget about Du Rim, but he knew she was lying and went home. He went to the hospital and saw Du Rim still taking care of Yi Hyan every day. When they met again, she told Kang Ju to stop following her and focus on his own work. She was sassy and treated him like she did when they first met, leading to arguments. A few days later, someone booked the entire restaurant. Du Rim prepared the food, but it turned out to be Kang Ju. He was the one who had booked it, so she had to make food for him. But when he came, he ate one bite and started complaining, demanding a refund. He had the right to cancel because it was 2 hours before the scheduled time. But she had already prepared 30 orders, and she couldn't just ignore it, so she felt a bit annoyed with him. She knew he was deliberately trying to cause trouble. He left afterward and was scolded by Du Rim's mother. She continued to let customers in as usual that day, but Kang Ju sat outside and watched. In the evening, she closed the restaurant and went to the hospital to take care of Yi Hyan. She was working without a break, so Kang Ju said he had come to visit Yi Hyan and would take care of him too. But after a little while, he fell asleep and was chased away by Du Rim. The next day, the whole company held a press conference to announce Yi Kyung's marriage to Kang Ju. But he didn't attend, forcing Ru Mai to make up a story to end the press conference. Yi Kyung and her mother thought Kang Ju was starting to incite a war between the two families, so they spread rumors to defame him. He went to Du Rim's restaurant and dragged her away. Kang Ju's father had finally learned about the conflict between his son and his future in-laws. Kang Ju wanted her to go with him to see his father, hoping he would take their side. But she refused, saying it was just Kang Ju's selfish desire. He asked her to choose between him and Yi Hyan, but at that moment she heard that Yi Hyan had woken up, and she left. She was happy to see that Yi Hyan was okay. Kang Ju, on the other hand, had silently accepted this outcome, and the truth that he was no longer in Du Rim's heart. When he went home, Kang Ju received the recording of his grandmother's confession, and Yi Kyung forced him to hold another press conference. But he didn't care, saying even if he gave up, it wouldn't matter. If he collapsed, Yi Kyung's family's company would go down with him, so she had no power to scare him. He then went to his father's room to see if he was okay before leaving. Yi Hyan's mother visited him and wanted him to recover quickly so he could escort Yi Kyung down the aisle at the wedding. The next morning, Ru Mai saw Kang Ju back to his usual self, working. It seemed even stranger to her. She thought he was forcing himself, but he said there was no reason to let a girl affect the company. The next day, Yi Kyung came and wanted to go visit Yi Hyan with Kang Ju. When they arrived, Yi Hyan only wanted to talk to his sister. He thought she must be very happy to be by Kang Ju's side, but she said that since he could have Du Rim by his side, why not run away together and live far away? As they were leaving, they ran into Du Rim, and they passed each other by. Du Rim was the one who suffered the most in this situation. She brushed away her tears and went to visit Yi Hyan. He advised her to come less often, because she had been working so hard without a break that her eyes were dark. She returned the tie he had used to bandage her wound. She only hoped he would recover soon and wear this tie to work. He said that Du Rim had given him the warmest smile he had ever received, so she didn't need to be sad and blame herself. That night, Kang Ju's father called the butler to ask about the recent events. The butler noticed that Yi Kyung was very different from before. He also guessed that Kang Ju was dating someone else, so Kang Ju's father went to the company to see him the next morning. He wanted to ask him directly, but Yi Kyung arrived suddenly, so he could only stay and eat the food she brought before leaving. Kang Ju said that instead of learning to play the piano, she should be learning how to act, and that she shouldn't touch him again. Ru Mai arrived, so Kang Ju took the opportunity to leave. The two girls had another opportunity to tease each other, but Ru Mai was completely outmatched, as Yi Kyung now had more power. She went to Du Rim's restaurant to drink and felt jealous that Du Rim could live a good life as if nothing had happened. She thought that crying wouldn't achieve anything, so she should just live a good life. She realized that Kang Ju probably didn't even know her real name and still saw her as a substitute for Yi Kyung. The landlady went to find Kang Ju and told him to be smart and remember to attend the press conference tomorrow. She also went to the hospital and wanted Yi Hyun to return to the company when he recovered. But he went to find Kang Ju and wanted him to understand Du Rim and remind him how much she loved him. But he only saw Du Rim as a liar, so Yi Hyun threatened him not to regret it if he took Du Rim. That night, Kang Ju went to find her and asked if she wanted to run away with him. But Du Rim didn't want to be selfish and keep Kang Ju to herself. She wanted him to be happy with his current situation, so she encouraged him and pushed him further away. She returned the lucky bracelet to the ghost, and she missed another opportunity that she had had for hundreds of years. The next morning, Du Rim decided to return the restaurant and go back to her hometown with her mother. She went to see Yi Kyung's mother to return the documents because she didn't want to be involved with her anymore. Kang Ju then went to the press conference and decided to throw everything away, declaring that the woman he loved was Du Rim. The media was in a frenzy. Ru Mai thought the whole thing was quite interesting. When Kang Ju's father heard the news, he had a heart attack because he was so shocked. Jin Ju heard the news and rushed to tell Du Rim. Kang Ju went home after hearing the news. He apologized for causing his father to be this way, but he couldn't hide his feelings anymore. But his father didn't blame him. He was even happy for him that he had done the right thing. That night, Yi Kyung was upset, and the ghost came to her and teased her. She advised Yi Kyung to learn how to control herself, otherwise it would have disastrous consequences for her. The next morning, Kang Ju went to find Du Rim, but she scolded him for being reckless. She then went to the hospital to pick up Yi Hyun. Kang Ju saw them being affectionate and was a bit annoyed. But she didn't care and took Yi Hyun back to the restaurant to celebrate. Kang Ju was also annoyed when Du Rim picked up food for Yi Hyun, so he ran in. He asked for a glass of water and noticed she was about to close the restaurant. He forbade her from leaving, and if she didn't come to him, he would go to her. He told Du Rim's mother the truth and asked her to understand him. That night, the landlady shared that she felt guilty towards Du Rim. It was because she had to worry about money for her surgery that Du Rim was dragged into this situation. The next morning, Kang Ju's father personally went to the restaurant to meet his favorite daughter-in-law. He didn't blame her, and he was ready to help her if she needed it. That night, Yi Kyung told her brother that she would reveal her grandmother's crimes to the whole world. He wanted her not to bring pain to others, but she only felt happy when Kang Ju was unhappy. The next morning, Yi Hyun brought Du Rim's restaurant documents to return to her, because Kang Ju had bought the whole place, so she didn't need to worry about his mother anymore. She learned about the disaster that was about to befall Kang Ju and went to find him. But Kang Ju was ready to make sacrifices, because she was everything he needed. Du Rim said that if anything happened to his family, she would go to live with them, and she would work hard to support them. The two mothers met again, and Kang Ju's mother decided to cut ties and accept whatever consequences came because she believed Yi Kyung's family had lost more. The news was quickly announced, and journalists rushed to the scene. Kang Ju decided to confess first because it would give him a chance to receive forgiveness from the public. He stood up and admitted to his grandmother's crimes, allowing her to leave peacefully. Kang Ju's father wasn't too shocked because he had known for a while and had quietly accepted it. Kang Ju's move left Yi Kyung's family furious, but Yi Hyun thought it was probably the best way to stop his mother and sister. The mother was suddenly arrested by the police for suspected attempted murder of Do Rim. Yi Kyung then went to the police station to ask for a way to save her mother, but the only thing that would work was if Kang Ju's mother dropped the charges. She then went to her and returned all her company shares in exchange for her mother's freedom. The mother was about to refuse, but she wanted to know how Yi Kyung felt, now that she was considered the daughter of a murderer. Yi Kyung said she was the one who understood best. She knelt down and pleaded, so her mother gave in and dropped the charges. Kang Ju's mother also returned the diary and divorce papers to her husband, wanting to punish herself by leaving and living alone for the rest of her life. The next morning, Do Rim's family went to a sauna together, so Kang Ju went along. It was his first time, so he was still a little nervous. When Do Rim and her grandmother were asleep, he sat there watching. He saw a young boy playing games loudly, so he chased him away. The boy refused, so he gave him some money to leave. He was tired of watching, so he took out his phone to take a picture. Do Rim woke up and demanded her phone back. She checked Kang Ju's phone and saw pictures of other girls. She made a scene and insisted that he take a picture with her. But she didn't like it and ruined the picture. Yi Kyung's family was almost completely bankrupt. Their stock price plummeted, and liquidators were ready to seize their assets. The next morning, Ru Mai took Kang Ju's brother to Do Rim's restaurant. She wanted to know how Yi Kyung's family was doing. Ru Mai went to visit them in person, but Yi Kyung thought she was trying to harm them by bringing food. Seeing that she still had the energy to insult her, Ru Mai knew she was okay and left. That night, Kang Ju dreamed that Do Rim was in trouble, so the next morning he went to see her and found that she was okay. He told her not to go anywhere because he would come to meet her mother that night. The ghost was targeting her again. Yi Kyung wanted to find a way to get revenge on Do Rim and vowed to make her suffer. That night, she called Kang Ju and asked him to meet because she was about to leave. Do Rim sat waiting for Kang Ju and fell asleep. She saw the ghost again, who told her that the person she had risked her life to protect was in danger. She woke up and saw the bracelet next to her again, which worried her. She called Kang Ju. He was at the time meeting with Yi Kyung, and she wanted to have one last drink with him. Yi Kyung's mother realized her daughter was acting strangely, so she called Yi Hyun home urgently. Yi Kyung poured him a drink, but secretly put poison in it. They both drank, and Yi Kyung asked him to help her keep the company for her mother and brother. She considered it her last wish. Kang Ju drank and left. It was Yi Kyung who drank the poison. Yi Kyung's mother rushed home and was horrified to find her daughter lying on the floor. Yi Hyun quickly called for an ambulance. Kang Ju arrived and heard the news, but suddenly the ghost came and put him to sleep. The ghost then went to find Do Rim and decided to risk her life against her. As she was choking her, the ghost appeared. It turned out that she and Yi Kyung's mother had a grudge from a previous life. It was Yi Kyung's mother who had known her and almost killed her and her child. To understand what happened, we have to go back over 100 years. Kang Ju's family had taken in a mute girl as a maid. She had a disability, but she had a talent for acupuncture and healing, so the head of the family was very fond of her. He gave her the name Bu Ai. He became increasingly attracted to her and fell in love with her. The bracelet that Do Rim was wearing was Bu Ai's. Because her husband liked the maid, his first wife was furious. But on their wedding night, Bu Ai revealed that she was the daughter of a family that Kang Ju's family had killed. She was going to take the head of the family to the grave with her, and they would die together. But she had also developed feelings for him, so she couldn't bring herself to do it. Later, Bu Ai's identity was revealed, and the head of the family wanted to execute her. But they had developed too much affection for each other, so he let her go and pretended that she was dead. But then another piece of news arrived. Bu Ai was pregnant with the head of the family's child. The first wife was afraid that Bu Ai would completely steal her position, so she hired the maid, or Yi Kyung's mother in the previous life, to kill Bu Ai and her child. But when the baby was born, she only managed to kill Bu Ai, but not the child, so the first wife raised the child herself. The head of the family didn't know about any of this, and now Bu Ai had waited for hundreds of years just to get revenge on her. The woman panicked and ran away. Bu Ai left too. Kang Ju ran in to see if Do Rim was okay. The next morning, Yi Kyung was distraught, not eating or drinking anything, but her mother was eating as if nothing had happened. The more she ate, the hungrier she felt. She vowed to bury those who had brought Yikayong to this point. The news of Yikayong's suicide attempt quickly spread, and the news of Du Rim taking money to pretend to be Yikayong was revealed. Kang Ju's company was criticized, and he was forced to close it for a day and hold a press conference to clarify things. Ru Mai thought the media was now favoring Yikayong after the suicide attempt, and if they said anything now, they would only be seen as making excuses. He was forced to negotiate with her, but she said that even if he gave her the entire company, it wouldn't be enough. But the most distressed person was Yihayan. He didn't know whether he should stick with his family or the woman he loved. Kang Ju's mother also announced that she was leaving the house and wouldn't accept Du Rim as her daughter-in-law. Du Rim felt guilty for causing everything that had happened to Yikayong and Kang Ju's mother. The landlady then went to clear out the shrine and locked it up. As she was leaving, Kang Ju stopped her. She said that she didn't hate Du Rim, but every time she saw her, she felt guilty for believing in the curse. Meanwhile, Du Rim had to endure criticism for Yikayong's actions. People said she had stolen Kang Ju from Yikayong. Kang Ju had to chase them all away. He told Du Rim to find a different place to stay, but she didn't want to run away because it would only make things worse. But staying there wouldn't make things better either. She went to visit Yikayong, who didn't have the courage to look Du Rim in the face. Du Rim helplessly asked Buai what she should do. Buai said she should resent the world, just like she did. She couldn't be happy if she kept thinking about the misfortune of others. That night, she expressed her desire to go back to her hometown with her mother and live like they did before, because that was her happiest time. But her mother knew she couldn't live far away from Kang Ju. Even so, she would rather be unhappy herself than drag others into her unhappiness. The next morning, she went to find Kang Ju's father and advised him to try to reconcile with his wife and give her a place to go to. She left afterward and said goodbye to the butler, making him feel as if she was about to leave for good. That night, the two main characters called each other. Kang Ju wanted to meet Du Rim's mother that weekend because she was staying at his sister's house. Du Rim knew that she would be chased away, but if that happened, she would come anyway. Kang Ju wanted to hear her sing a song before he went to sleep. The next morning, Kang Ju went to the restaurant, but the only one there was Jin Ju. Du Rim and her grandmother had gone back to their hometown to raise fish and grow vegetables, or to be more precise, catch fish. She had left a message for Kang Ju and Yikayong, telling the latter to live a good life because she was no longer there to make her unhappy. Yikayong went to berate her mother, saying that they were the ones who did wrong and were blaming Du Rim. She had been following her mother all her life, but she had only been using her to achieve her own ambition. The mother then went crazy, mistaking her daughter for Du Rim or even Buai. She was later taken to the hospital, but she would recognize Yikayong at times and then mistake her for Du Rim. Kang Ju still couldn't forget Du Rim's image, even though she had left him again. At night, Buai secretly went to Kang Ju and showed him dreams about what had happened in the past life. Meanwhile, Du Rim was completely settled in her life in the countryside and seemed to be pregnant. Buai said it was a new beginning for her. Time went by, and Kang Ju completely changed. He was no longer harsh, but knew how to stand up for his employees and rejected all offers from models and advertisers. He also knew how to care for children better, but Du Rim's image was still there. Kang Ju's parents finally met again, and the father realized that she was the most precious person he had missed his whole life. 2 years after Du Rim left Kang Ju, he gradually realized that his whole family was now filled with laughter, thanks to the things Du Rim brought into their lives. Meanwhile, Du Rim had given birth and was still working to ensure that she and her child could live well. She also helped her neighbors enthusiastically. Although she missed Kang Ju, she only had to look at her child's face to forget everything else. The fortune teller was giving Ru Mai and her younger brother a reading. He said they were a beautiful couple, but it turned out that the younger brother had made it all up, because since Buai had passed away, he had lost his ability to tell fortunes. A few days later, Kang Ju decided to go find Du Rim. He went to her hometown in person, but when he asked someone on one side of the road, the other person was delivering goods on the opposite side. He continued to look for her like this until night. Although they almost didn't meet, once again, the red thread helped them find each other. Tears flowed freely when Kang Ju saw his son for the first time. Du Rim's grandmother thanked him for not giving up and continuing to search for her. Du Rim was then brought back to the city, and their love story captivated the internet, with many people visiting her restaurant to see for themselves. Du Rim's grandmother then revealed the truth about herself and the red shoe. She said that 50 years ago, she was married to Kang Ju's grandfather, but she had no feelings for him. That night, when he was knocked unconscious by Bu Ai, she ran away with the man she loved. She caused trouble for the family, so she hoped they could forgive her. But Kang Ju's father didn't blame her, because what they didn't get then, they got now with the two main characters. A few days later, Du Rim went to the hospital and saw Yi Kyung again. She wanted to visit the landlady, who had been in a vegetative state for a while, but when she saw Du Rim, the landlady started talking again because she wanted her to forgive her past mistakes. Du Rim then went to visit Yi Hyun again, and he gave her a massage because he was now rich and could give her anything he wanted. Secretary Kim and Jin Ju also ended up together, making a complete set. It was the anniversary of Kang Ju's grandfather's death, so Du Rim helped prepare the offerings. Kang Ju was forced to watch the baby, and his younger brother came back, not knowing who the anniversary was for. Du Rim said it was for her grandfather, but also for Bu Ai. Du Rim was grateful to Bu Ai because she was the one who helped them come together. Du Rim still remembered Kang Ju's promise from the past and asked him to tell her when he first fell for her. He said that he fell for her at his parents' introduction, when she tripped and they accidentally kissed. While they were happy, Bu Ai also went to see the fortune teller. She smiled for the first time in hundreds of years because she was finally able to eat offerings. The fortune teller wondered how Yi Kyung and Du Rim could have the same face, even though they weren't related. Bu Ai had gone and changed Yi Kyung's face when she was little, because she didn't see them as the sun and its shadow, but as two rays of sunshine that would shine together. Her duty in the mortal world was over, so she would eventually transcend, but she hoped the two of them would meet again. The fortune teller was a little sad to lose a friend and customer magnet, but there was nothing he could do except study and make his own living. A few days later, Du Rim invited her family to play a card game, and her mother-in-law was actually quite good at it. She then taught Du Rim how to make tea and gave her the key to the shrine. The maid ran over to say that the little master had run off again. Du Rim knew that her son had gone to the shrine, just like Kang Ju did when he was little. But the reason he liked to go there was because Bu Ai had always been kind to him there.